joining the show. The show is just getting started. We had actually a ton of technical issues getting this thing started on time today. So no offense to Raj for forgetting to record. I did as well. So if you're just joining, we're just getting started.
And to recap, tip one, worry less on expertise, focus more on being relatable. Recap. Tip two, write short single sentence hooks to start your post.
And now you're caught up. You just missed a lot of witty banter. But yeah, so let's get into it, because I was mentioning like, hey, these are a lot of these tips are like, I'm big on like, I'm not teaching hacks or gimmicks. A lot of the things is just knowing what you want to say and formatting it in a way that people want to read, right? So it's like making it easy for the consumer. Mm-hmm. And so when you're thinking about, okay, I have a hook, I'm going to keep it relatable, I'm not going to think being an expert. Now what? Every post that I write, and this is for my newsletter and honestly for like webinars and all the bigger projects I work on, as a content leader, is what is the one thing, this is the tip, what's the one thing that you're going to solve for your audience in that post? One problem. If you can solve one problem for your audience in each post, you'll skyrocket your engagement and your following. Now, the thing you can solve can be multiple things. Sometimes I want to solve like awareness. Sometimes like you didn't know this book existed and here's this value it can bring to you. Sometimes I'm solving like, might be a little funnier, right? Like, Raj, some of the stuff you put out, while there's like information in it, a lot of it's like highly entertaining, right? So the problem you're solving is like, I'm going to put a smile on your face. I'm going to brighten your day in some way. And that's okay too. If you're thinking like, I know someone was putting in like how to kind of be like a thought leader for my boss, or like kind of get, their content going, is understand what are the things that they know well and they can teach others, and just pick one thing per post, right? So I kind of shared earlier, I was like, what's one thing I can share with other marketing leaders? Is like, well, hiring. What are the things, a common question people ask me is, what do you look for in a content marketer? Should I have someone who knows how to write? Should I know someone that knows blogs? Should I know strategy? My take is like, you want someone who's coachable. You want someone who is, fundamentally sound in terms of like knows how to write. You want to know, someone who can be a strategic thinker and put pieces, like be a problem solver. So I'm putting a little list together and you can share that. The one problem is, here's what to look for when you hire people. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about the big problem, like how do I build a marketing team? That's a masterclass. Like that's going to take hours to describe all the nuances of building an entire marketing organization. But you can dive in and zoom into like one small problem, right? And just cover one tip on that. And there you go. You have a post.
Yeah. I also think, and I think where a lot of people get stuck is they think that what they're writing is the only time they're ever allowed to write about that thing. Therefore, it has to contain every piece of knowledge they must have about that one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a case where, Eminem is wrong. You don't only get one shot, right? You can come back the next day and do a follow-up or do a completely different thought, right? Like it's like, you got to really get good. And it just happens with practice, like parsing down into bite-sized pieces of information. Because just think about it. Even if it's something you know a lot about, there's a decent chance the viewing or the reading audience, it's the first time they're hearing that, at least from you. And so there's no way they're going to be able to retain everything. So you've got to be able to parse it down into what's something I can give them that they can take away today. And you know what? Right. Tomorrow I can literally write on the same topic, but just write the second thing I know about that topic.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Especially like, I mean, all these things, all the little tips, like, okay, what do you look for in a content marketer? I could say, well, it depends on where you are in your business. It depends on the maturity. How big is your team? We're talking essay answers. So I love the idea is zoom into that one little thing and then be as brief as possible.
Yeah. Let's go ahead, because I want to make sure we still have time to do the review of the two post on this. Let's go ahead and move over to tip 4.
I'm just going to give, this is going to be the fastest one, because I was writing these and I'm like, okay, I've got tactics now, but there's kind of like truths people don't talk about on LinkedIn. And there's some fantastic content creators on LinkedIn talking about how to write on LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about myself, there's other people. And I'm like, no one's really talking about like mindset or like the real experience. Like, okay, Devin, I, got your course, or I watched the session and I'm cranking, right? It's been 3 to 5 weeks. What to really expect. And so I wanted to give kind of like some honest truths about posting on LinkedIn. The first thing is expect disagreement. expect disagreement. Now, you're not always going to get it, but you won't be shocked when you do if you go into it expecting it. Now, to your point, Raj, earlier, which I really appreciate, is you were like, Devin has his own unique perspective. It makes me think. Me and you are cut from the same cloth. We agree on a lot of things. We disagree on stuff too, and that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But people are going to hit my profile and go, this is terrible. It doesn't matter if 100 people said this is the best advice I've ever gotten. You will get someone who's like, this is dumb. It'll never work. Why would you do this? And our brains are wired to remember that one and not that 100, it makes complete sense. And I won't dive into it, but it sucks. And so I just want to like be honest, like it's okay that people disagree. It's actually a great thing because if no one ever disagrees with you, you're being obvious.
It's and you're not providing anything that's worth stopping to read, I think, if everyone agrees with you. And it does take a little bit of like an ego hit. Like to your point, like I can tell you of the last like 10 things I've written, if there was a person who disagreed, I know exactly who those people are. You know, it's like 3 or 4. I know exactly what they wrote and I know exactly who they are, or at least what their profile photo looks like.
Yeah.
and that's my takeaway thought for the rest of the day, not the 3,000 people who endorsed it.
I remember the one email. So we launched this. I published the most downloaded piece of content in Gong history in the middle of the pandemic. I was so proud of myself. I mean, it was a big personal achievement, and like obviously it helped. I'm not lying, Raj. 10,000 people downloaded this thing.
Wow.
One guy hit me up, and I remember exactly what he said. And like I remember opening the email, and I remember being like, man, why are you coming at me all sideways, man? Like, come on, I'm a human being. And then I realized like, dude, this is literally what is like 0.001% of people who downloaded, like decided to send this to me. Like it's such a small amount. But anyway, don't let it scare you away. You're not going to get a bunch of people, being trolls, but in case you get disagreement, it's all good. Roll with it and be open to a discussion, honestly.
Yeah, so Mike just wrote in the
other
chat
ones are
here,
pretty.
Don't you think disagreement creates discussion and possibly education? Yeah, and that's kind of like what you have to remind yourself. Like if you just posted to create an echo chamber of your own thoughts, you're probably not doing it. You're probably not in it for the right reasons anyway.
Yeah, and then I love the disagreements too. And like my first thought was like, what do they see that I'm missing? Or like, you know what I mean? What am I missing from their perspective to understand it better?
Yeah.
And then my first goal is to understand their perspective. And by the way, I don't always go back and forth in the comments because like that can sometimes escalate and whatnot. I'll DM people sometimes too, but I'll take it as feedback like, oh, I wrote this thing I'm really proud of. I thought it was complete. Someone's like, oh, but you're missing this one thing. Oh, great. Guess what that is? An idea for another post. Exactly. So yeah, Mike, great point. Like that's exactly what it should be. And that's kind of my point is like go into, I don't know, hoping if you want to hope for a disagreement, great, but like just expect it.
What would I put down here in the chat here to say this is like tip number 4 equals if I'm going to condense it down into a statement?
Well, there's 3, but yeah, I would say it's just like expect disagreement. That's it. Expect disagreement and then add mics,
right.
It creates a discussion. So yeah, there's more in the, a couple more we'll share, but we'll move on for now. It's funny. Someone was like, I want to, in the chat earlier, they're like, I want to figure out this LinkedIn algorithm. All right. Tip 5 is like, don't write this one down, but like, don't bother beating the algorithm. Now, here's what I mean. If you try to beat the algorithm, you're going to end up doing gimmicky things. What you want to do instead is, and the tip is, focus on understanding your audience deeply and solving their problems. The LinkedIn algorithm is good for things like don't put links in the body of the post because you're taking people outside the feed. LinkedIn doesn't like that. It's going to ding your reach. There's a whole bunch on that stuff. But if your strategy is like, what's the rules of the algorithm and how do I beat the algorithm, then you're missing the most important part, which is like your audience and solving their problems.
Yeah. It's interesting, this specific topic of the algorithm, because a lot of people will claim like they know how the algorithm works, but I don't know about you, but I subscribe to Daniel Roth, who's like the head of LinkedIn creator content, like at LinkedIn. He's the head of LinkedIn creator field. And he even writes in his newsletter, he's like, I don't know how our algorithm works and I run this platform. So anyone who claims like, oh, this is exactly how it works, like, yeah, maybe you have some like inklings, but there really is not like one concrete way. And they say, like the reason why we can't tell you how it works is because it constantly updates itself. without us knowing.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. I think it was in The Social Dilemma, which is a great movie if anyone hasn't seen it on Netflix, about social media. Is they were even like, yeah, the people who made the algorithms don't even control or know how it works anymore, because that's kind of the whole point of an algorithm, is it changes and adapts itself. Yeah. So, and it looks like Tiana, who said that was her, and I'm teasing, by the way, Tiana, but I do get a lot of people messaging me like, you cracked the algorithm, tell me how, and like all these things. I'm like, what? Like, I know like 5 things about the algorithm. And I'll rattle a couple off for you, Tiana. So one is, if you ever see people posting links, URLs in the comments, that's because the LinkedIn algorithm is designed to keep people in the feed, right? It wants, Raj opens up his phone and he's scrolling. It wants that to continue as long as possible. And so if you put a link in the post, it goes, oh, you're trying to bounce people outside of that. I say the word ding, I'm going to reduce the reach that this post has. So you'll notice over like an hour or two, it can almost die. Like it can actually, like, you won't get any more engagement because it's reducing the amount that it's, showing your content on other people's feeds. Other things that are good for it, commenting back. When people comment on your post, comment back. One of the things it's looking for are true conversations happening on your post. Are people reacting to it? Are they commenting? Are they sharing? Are other people commenting to each other? So if Khalid posts, will Roy comment, and then Royce comments on top of that? That's showing true, because it's digital, interaction and engagement. And so it's going to say, oh, great, this is a real conversation starter, and it will put that content on more people's feeds.
Yeah, it's definitely the link as a comment to the post, not in the post itself. What's your take on time of day? Like, are you intentional about that?
I am, and I've tested this a little bit. So the main thing to look at is where your audience is, and then when are they on LinkedIn. So I'm like a broken record. Everything starts with the audience. So I'm on Pacific Coast time, PST. Most of my audience is in San Francisco, Bay Area, West Coast, and then I'm in East Coast, and then like it's kind of sporadic, like Chicago, Texas, and then like international. So I've learned that when I post at like 7 to 8 a.m. Pacific, that seems to be the best, because people in like my major geo are just now getting on LinkedIn, right? People are on LinkedIn, by the way, like 7, 8 a.m., right before work, lunch, and right after work, like 4 or 5 p.m. Those are the highlights. There's a lot of data on this. I didn't make that up. And so if you think about it, if there's 3 hot spots for your audience bases, you want to hit those hot spots as much as possible. If I post at 11 p.m., which I do sometimes, I recycle content, my EMEA and Indian audience, shout out to anyone from India, are like my 2 international hubs. So I get engagement, but it's less because it's like 10, 20% of my overall audience base. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I know there's the whole, like, in a digital world, it doesn't matter when you post. Yeah, if you're like Chris Voss or Daniel Pink and you have like millions of people who are like super tuned in.
Yeah. Like Mark Cuban, like Lori Grenier, like they can post whenever they want because they've got, the influencer account already.
Well, and they're a global brand, right? Like people in all countries, not all countries for all these people, but you know what I mean? Like they're huge. So it's like, yeah, I would say, like, here, in one sentence, post early, post when you get started at work. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. We got a couple of questions here around like anything related to video having less reach. My personal experience that I think is just crazy is like, my most engaged with content has been videos, like specifically those music videos that I'll drop. But somehow it'll say like the actual like reach of it is like the numbers truly do not add up. Like I had for the Stan parody I did last year, Carl, right? Like within 2 weeks or something like that, I think within 2 or 4 weeks, the video had been watched for 16,000 total minutes, but then also somehow only had like 16,000 total views. And I'm like, there's no way it was a 1-for-1.
Yeah, the way they track views is a little different because there's like, I've talked to them. It's like 3 seconds, 10 seconds. The thing to remember too is the algorithm changes. Like the way that they measure thing changes over time. So like,
and they literally just updated it last week again.
So yeah, like articles a couple years ago, like LinkedIn articles used to get tons of engagement because they wanted people to put longer form content on their post or on their platform. Sorry. Yeah. Now, as someone who writes expensive research-backed articles, I will post that and get a few hundred likes and comments. I'll post the same content in a post, like truncate it, put on a post 10x, same content. So it really just kind of depends on the format. Your videos are awesome. So I'll say that's why your videos do so well. But people do like videos, and they can be, point and shoot, Instagram reel style. I think the real thing is like, are you providing value? Is it entertaining? Is it informative?
Yeah.
And it can be in either order.
And that said too, if you are going to post videos, captions, a couple of reasons why you want to have captions. When it's in the scroll, the default mode is mute. So if there's captions, people can read what's being said through audio, and then they're like, oh, I want to listen to that. So then they'll click it. If there's no captions, and they don't think about, like, they're like, oh, I can't hear that, I'm not going to watch it. The other reason too, just from being a good human being, is it makes your content more accessible to different different conditions. I think I'm using the wrong word there, but basically different accessibility types.
Right.
And then knowing also, this is kind of like the algorithm side of it, knowing that platforms like LinkedIn want to be more inclusive, they are also going to ding you less or help you more if you're making your content more accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
And captions is one of those ways.
Yeah, always do captions. Cool. Let's jump into 6, and we can keep taking cues as we go. I just want to make sure we get through these. And let's jam through these in 2 minutes each, and then we'll get to the coaching. Cool. If you've hung out with me this far, you know that I already do tip number 6, writing or speaking, which the tip is use conversational language in your writing. Use conversational language in your writing. Here's what I mean. Write like you speak, tell simple truths, write shorter sentences. Now, I don't mean, here's what I mean. Write like you speak. Now, if I'm hanging out with Raj, getting, pizza, I curse a little bit more and I use a little bit more heavier slang. I'm not saying that today, but I'm saying the words use, not utilize or leverage. Just use the simple words that we use every day. And the reason why is it will have more meaning, right? Use words that people can understand. Simple truths, you don't have to exaggerate to sell. This is not the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know what is. I wasn't there when bread was sliced for the first time, but I doubt anything I'm doing is that great. But if you share honest benefits, hey, I grew my LinkedIn following to 50,000. Here's how you can do it too. Here's exact examples. Here's exactly what you're looking for on an emotional level. I don't have to exaggerate. I'm just going to be honest, tell simple truths. That works really well. Last one, talked about it in the hook. Just write shorter sentences. They don't always have to be 5-6 words long. Like, you don't want to be choppy, but when people do the long, like, how many commas can I fit into this sentence while making it relatively grammatically correct, or colons or apostrophe, like all those, not apostrophes, but like parentheses, like the longer your sentence is, the longer the thought is, and the harder it is for someone to understand. So those are like super quick, easy things. And honestly, I think that they're easier to do. I find it hard to use
polysyllabic words.
There it is. Can't even say it, let alone write it. So I'm speaking for truth.
I think I might have commented on one of your posts a while back about how I was like, there's nothing that gets in the way of good content like a journalism degree or like an English degree. Because everyone like anyone who has a journalism or English degree, like all I think about is like, oh no, MLA formatting. And like, I can't, I have to spell out the number ONE. I can't just use the number 1 on the keyboard, even though for readability's sake, people are going to see the letter 5 or the number 5 if it's a 5 and not FIVE much easier. So really just like, I mean, I don't mean to make it sound crass, but dumb it down, like in probably the most like intense form of that.
Simplify. My first sales job, my director pulled me aside after I had put in 100 touch points. So I had 100 total calls and emails in one day, nothing to show for it, not a single email back, not a single meeting. And he pulled my laptop. He's like, come over here. He looks at my laptop. He was going through my outbox. I let him, by the way, in case you're wondering. And he's like, excuse my language, but he was like, did you go to school to be a fucking lawyer? I was like, no, I was an English major. And he's like, oh, that's the problem. Like, you write like a lawyer, man. No one's going to read this. This is terrible. And he was like, be the Devin at the pod, like hanging out with the team. Be Devin at the bar, 2 drinks or less. Be that guy because he's relatable, right? And so like I saw David in here. He's like, I use, I think some South Side Chicago. Here's the thing. The how you sound will attract other people that you want to attract. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to attract people who have doctorates or who are research, do research degrees and all those all this long form stuff I'm uninterested in. It's not wrong or bad. It's just who I'm trying to attract in the group that I'm trying to provide value to. Someone reads my stuff and they're like, not enough multi-syllabic words, pass. That's fine. I'm not for you. And that's all good.
Shall we give them tip 7?
Tip 7, examples sell. If you want to persuade your audience to change either the way they think or the way that they act, you need to connect with them at an emotional level, right? And the best way to do that is examples. So what you want to do is think of like, I teach this a lot in my team, like, what's the desired outcome? What am I going to get if I do this thing? If I follow Devin's 7 tactics, it's in the title. It's literally in the title. 7 writing tips for growing your audience. Now, if you grow your audience, remember we opened up with that. Maybe you want to increase your impressions. Maybe you want to grow a loyal following. Maybe you want to make your boss look like a thought leader. Now I went from a high level, grow your audience, to specific examples, right? If you want your content, one thing on the post that when I promoted this event, I was like, all right, no, I wrote it today about something else. I was like, your content will, if you don't do this thing, your content will collect more dust than engagement. Right? That's a tangible feeling. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't want that to happen. That sucks. And so people lean in. And again, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying. I'm just telling simple truths with clear examples.
One follow-up question that I'm sure is probably bouncing around in people's minds. And then we'll jump over and do the examples, the sample post that we'll review. So maybe unpack the idea of examples a little bit more, because I know, like, if I hear example, the first thing I'm thinking of is like, so does that mean like I have to prove like, oh, this post has, like, whatever I'm saying in this post, I have to then say, and that's how you get a 28% ROI in whatever. Yeah, I don't think that's what you mean though. So can you unpack that more?
Yeah, that's a proof point. A proof point is like that stat, like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Colgate, right? That's awesome. An example would be like, think of like, what do people want when it comes to their teeth, right? They want good breath, they want white teeth, they want a nice smile, right? So if I was selling toothpaste, I would be like, this is the best toothpaste for people who want to impress a girl on a first date with their smile, or, you know, a guy on their first date, whatever it is, right? So it's like, oh, you're going more from like great toothpaste to like a good smile, to a good smile in the moment it matters most, which is meeting your boss for the first time, right? Or like, if I wanted to do loss aversion, be like, imagine leaning over to your boss in a meeting to whisper something smart in their ear, and all they smell is your coffee breath. Use Devin Reed toothpaste. That's why. People be like, oh yeah, that's pretty funny. That's pretty relatable. I would hate for that to happen. Potentially go buy my toothpaste, right? So that's going to be, and again, I'm going clearly off the cuff because I'm definitely not a toothpaste salesman or marketer, but those concrete,
but you did a pretty good job.
You're hired. they're going to, but the other thing too is they're going to resonate with people. How many, and I gave this a really hard time to T-Mobile in one of my articles. T-Mobile and AT&T, their ads are like the #1 cell phone provider, the best coverage, the best this, the #1 that. You forget it all. You forget all of that because it's not memorable, right? If someone was like, use Verizon, it works most of the time when you need it. Be like, I'd at least remember you, right? And be like, yeah, that's all that matters. I really just want my cell phone to work when I need it, where I live. I don't really care if you work in Nebraska because I live in California.
Well, and you remember, like, I mean, this is like probably 15, 20 years ago now, when you were just a baby. We're basically the same age. When we was both just a baby. Do you remember, like, if anything, like Verizon stood out for several years with that guy going anywhere in the world saying, "Can you hear me now?" Good. And the message there was like, I mean, they didn't directly say it, but with the visuals.
Example,
right? Versus now, I actually don't know which provider has the most 5G towers, even though one of them does say it in their commercial. I literally don't know which provider that is referencing off the top of my head.
That was one of the most brilliant advertisements, because so many times it's the exact example people say, "Hey Raj, can you hear me now? All right, cool. Good." Like, that's why it worked so well, because everyone was like, I've said that. I've struggled with that. I see myself in that story and example, and we all remember it. So shout out to whoever made that ad.
Now, before we jump into those 2 examples we're going to review, I do just want to clarify these 7 tips we covered. It's not that you, like, I guess you could just do one of them at a time, but they could actually all 7 be implemented in a single post, right?
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's kind of like the DNA of of a highly engaging post. There's more too. By no means is it exhaustive, though it is rather long. And like I said, the guide has like more examples and all this stuff that I'll share out. But yeah, I mean, my advice would be take one of these things this week. Take the hook. I think the hook's the easiest one to work on, and we'll focus on that in a second. And then start thinking of the body. Again, I go top down. Like, what's the hook? What's the body? What's the one thing that I'm going to teach them? So on and so forth. So cool, man. Should we get into this? We got Isaac Wood. Isaac Wood sent in a post. Can you see it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Can you see it, Raj?
I can. Yeah.
All right, cool. So shout out to Isaac. I posted, hey, if you say yes to my post, I will hit you up and we'll go over your post. So we won't read the whole thing. People, anytime you show words on a screen, people start reading, even if you're talking to them. So I imagine most of you already at least halfway through this post. But here's what, let's do this, Raj. I'm going to look at it and give 3 takeaways: positive, negative, all good, or positive, constructive. And then you can do the same. And then if folks have questions, Isaac included, give us a shout. All right. We might go a little bit over. Sorry if you have a 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Cool. So here's the first thing. I actually really like this post right away for 2 reasons. Short, single sentence hook. Met with a potential customer today. Gives me a bit of a baseline. And guess what my brain goes? What happened? Right? What did you do? So I love that. It gives me a little bit, it's like concrete enough, but vague enough to make me interested. I'm curious. So I go, okay, cool. Focused on solving problems, not selling a product. I like that. Here's where I love, this is my favorite line. Here are 5 lessons I learned in 45 minutes. So you're telling me, Isaac, in about 5 seconds, I'm going to learn everything you learned in 45 minutes. That's exponential time savings. Thanks, man. Haven't even read it yet, and I'm already grateful. Every org is different. Don't assume you know their priorities. Little insight there. I like it. Ask questions to understand current landscape. Boom. Ask what could be better about their process. Okay, so you're giving me insight on how to ask better questions. Listen with intent. Don't wait to speak. You could tell me that all day, every day. Never gets old. Set a specific follow-up plan. All right. And then he opens it up with a conversation or a question to elicit a conversation. How do you approach a customer conversation? So I liked it. I liked the formatting. It hooked me immediately. And so, yeah, that's my quick hit. There you go, Isaac. Liked it.
I like it as well. I think and this is just a very like small tactical thing. You don't really ever need to use more than 2 to 3 hashtags. They're pretty inconsequential on LinkedIn. And if you are, like, just think through, like, is someone proactively searching hashtag customer conversation? Probably, I mean, maybe, but probably not. And you can even look up like hashtag whatever to see what's being followed.
Yep.
My personal use of hashtag, like, just because I want to create like a following around hashtag believe the hype. So that's what's at the end of all of my posts. That way my content becomes easily searchable. So unless you're going for a route of like creating around a specific point, topic you want to get a following for, and if you are going to use hashtags, like, just think through like what would be something someone would actually serve. And I don't know if customer conversation is, I just don't feel like hashtag customer conversation is really like a followed topic necessarily.
I don't know. It's a great point though. The way I view it is, and I do 2 or 3, which mine are same things, use like content strategy and content marketing are usually like the 2. Sometimes I'll use LinkedIn content. I haven't checked that 3rd one, but so yeah, the point you're making, Roger, is like the goal of a hashtag is to pick one that has a broad appeal. People are looking for it. Or the branded one that Raj is doing, which is like, no, this is my content. So if you like it and you click it, you're going to see a bunch more of my content, which is super smart for LinkedIn because it's kind of a pain to like go to your profile, look at all your activity. Cool. And Isaac said, good insights, guys. Glad you thought so, Isaac.
I didn't realize you were on this call live. So awesome.
Oh yeah, I did. I looked first. I don't know if our second one, Jen, is or not. But she was our second winner. So I got to go. It's okay that I'm changing my screen size. This is not a sign of if I liked it or not, to fit it all in here. But all right, you want to go first, Raj?
Yeah. Well, I'll let you start because I gotta look through it. I have not looked through it.
Okay, that's fair. I put you on the spot. And real quick, if you have to jump because we're at the hour, I just want to say a quick thank you for hanging out with us. We'll send the recording. Everyone's going to get signed up for the content strategy newsletter. I hope you like it. If you like today, you'll love the newsletter. If you don't want more email, you can unsubscribe. It has an unsubscribe link, so it's all good. I just want to give a quick shout. All right, cool, Jen. So I liked this one to start. I wish she would have, maybe made like this the opening. Because if you're like, RevOps is not easy. RevOps is not the goal. My brain goes is like, well, then what is RevOps? And I think you could have propelled me to the next line. RevOps is the how. Okay, great. That's my this is the point so far that I'm guessing is like, this is what the post is going to be about. Has hiccups, a lot of change. Okay, cool. Now then my brain, I don't know if anyone else's brain does this. I then zoom out real quick and I go, what am I signing up for mentally? And I go, it's a longer post, which is fine. And there's some block text, which is fine. The challenge is when you have, like Raj, you said earlier, when you have those block texts, you have to deliver because people's attention span is kind of short. So I haven't read the whole thing yet, Jen. Just something to kind of consider is just a little bit on the formatting.
Well, and to that point too, a lot of times assuming I have the time in the day, because I don't always, but I will write the post, but then before I hit publish, sometimes I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to take what is actually the second to last line and make that the second line because I'm like, you know what, now that I read through it, because a lot of times when you're writing, I don't know if you feel this way, especially if you're in like kind of that like live figuring out a post mode, your thoughts start to gain momentum once you start typing. And then like the best stuff actually ends up being what you write towards the end. And then I'm like, oh, you know what, why don't I just like switch this around and almost like Lego block this?
100%. I definitely do like Tetris Lego building like after I write to get things in the right order.
Yeah.
So yeah, it totally makes sense. So then I like, okay, so then she's basically saying, I should be pitching you to hire consultants. Well, that's not always right. So now I'm interested because I'm like, okay, I feel like a hot take is coming and I love a hot take, right? So she's talking about if you're using outside firms, when you should do it, the hiring landscape. My honest feedback is I bet you could have said this in less sentences, right? I think the point is here. I think you could have made it a little bit more succinct. But the thing I really like is this. My eyes jump here because of color. And so even if I just kind of read like to here, I would have jumped here before I left.
Yeah.
And I love these insights. And I know Isaac did too. It's like boom, 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 boom. Like if you only read this, right? The job doesn't have a career path. It's all procedure work, et cetera, et cetera. I liked it. And then she kind of goes down, she doubles down on it's hard to, the challenges of RevOps. Now, my honest thing was like, and I try not to do this. I was like, what's the engagement like? Because I'm not a RevOps person. Like, I don't really like, this doesn't speak to me, right? I'm reviewing it as a content creator. I was like 160 people and 10 comments, and I have no idea Jen's following size. I know she's the CEO, probably has a good network, but that's good, right? Like it must have resonated with a good amount of people because RevOps is still a fairly niche topic. Sure. And a good amount of people engage with it. So it clearly struck a chord with the right group.
I think the maybe the one tweak I'd make on this, not knowing the subject matter very well, is if you have the don't hire if with the red X's, that last paragraph, my advice, it could be like, try this instead, colon, and then green check marks, hire mid or senior level director, do this, delegate work, right? Build around this person, right? Then it's like there's a before and after kind of built into it. That's very clear to see.
I love that. And that's the thing we were talking about earlier, right? It's like the content's clearly here. You can just make it better with better formatting for social, for LinkedIn feed. You know what I mean? It's just easier on the brain.
Because I think then what'll probably happen, you might corroborate this, like if I'm reading this and I initially just click the see more, I'm probably immediately going to jump to the red X's, then immediately jump to the green checks, and then read the whole thing over again to have it in context.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people might even just read this. If you like really know RevOps, you know what I mean? You could just read this and be like, oh yeah, great post, Jen, boom, and move on.
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. I write for skimmers when I write blogs, which like people read the subheaders. They look at the charts, the quotes in the middle and they move on, and that's fine. If they got value, that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice post, Jen. Thanks for submitting. I don't know if you're on the line. I'll find out in a second.
Thank you, Jen.
I don't think she's here.
All right. So you got 2-3 minutes to stick around for any final questions people have?
Yeah, I got 1 minute. I actually am a couple minutes late, but let's see what other questions folks have.
So if you have a new question, go ahead and drop it. Otherwise, I'm going to scroll back to what I saw someone ask previously, which was around the idea of condensing content. I don't remember who asked it, but someone said they are a life and business coach, and then she said it was like really hard to condense her knowledge down into like little like bite-sized content. Any Yeah, that's where I struggle. As a life confidence coach, it's hard for me to provide bite-sized content. Any thoughts for her?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like the exhaustive part. And I do this too, by the way. I love there's a good quote. If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. I don't know if you haven't heard that, it's someone way smarter than me. I think
it was Mark Twain.
Mark Twain, or someone old and dead and better at writing than I am. And so that's me too. Like, I love a good, like, longer LinkedIn post. I like to, I wrote a newsletter for that reason. I get to go a little bit deeper. The truth is, there's a time and a place. And what I mean by that is you don't always have to give the how, which is super in depth. So what I think of is, what, why, how is a great framework. What's so important? Why is it so important? How do I put it into action? So not every post, and I'm just learning this, like, not every post needs the how. Sometimes it's just like a really insightful thing, right? Which is like, what's important, why it's so important. And then kind of like, it can be short. Like, if you do these things in your day-to-day, you'll live a better life, whatever that thing is. Versus sometimes like, here's what it is, here's why it's important, and here is an exhaustive way of a hiring plan that you can create. Yeah. Which, again, I don't think it's the content, it's the placing. Like, do people want to go 1,000 words in a LinkedIn post? Probably not. You'll get some people, and I've definitely pulled it off a few times, but a lot of the most high engaging content I have is usually like 2 to 4 lines because it's shorter. So people are going to get to the end of it. Even better if you don't even need to click see more, guess what? People read the whole post, guaranteed, or almost all but guaranteed. So you can still be really insightful and still provide a lot of value without necessarily getting super tactical every time. Maybe once a week, go deep, and 2-3 times a week, keep it kind of higher level.
We are out of time. Devin, thank you for going overtime with us. Sure. We're going to get this recording out to everybody. You'll either get an email from Devin or me, or from both of us. One of us will be sending you the recording. And be sure to continue on and following Devin's content. He's got a course on LinkedIn strategy, on more on this, more on how to like build, genuine connections. It's really good stuff. So make sure you check that out as well. And if you're new to the startup Hypeman ecosystem, nice to meet y'all, and I'm excited to get to know every one of you better. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. I will drop. I guess just search our names. I don't even think you can click.
Probably found me on LinkedIn if you're here, so you probably already know of us. But that's the best place. But no, I appreciate everyone for hanging out. I hope it was valuable. Please feel free to follow up. Like I said, we'll find a way to get you the recording. Yeah. And then everyone's going to get added to the newsletter. Feel free to respond there with any follow-up questions as well. Raj, as always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
I'll catch you later.
Later, everyone.